Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Langman again, board certified pediatrician, fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics, mother of 6 and grandmother to 2, with an update from the AAP on head lice. Head lice causes lots of anxiety, hurt feelings, fear, and actually they don't carry disease. They are not considered a public health threat. And yet, in the United States, it is estimated $500 million are spent annually to get rid of them. Now, I don't mean that anybody wants them. I understand it's a great source of stress and anxiety, but having head lice is not a sign of poor hygiene or of low living standards. I want to try to help you remain calm about head lice and also teach you all the updates in this recently published guideline from the AAP. It was an update. The last one was made, I believe, in 2015, so it had been about 7 years. And we do have new medications available, so I'll go through all of those. First of all, we just said this is not an actual health threat. So remember, absolutely never would you use harmful substances on your child. I personally, years ago, did have a case of 2 siblings who had to be in the pediatric intensive care unit because the father found out the kids had head lice and used kerosene on their heads. Well, kerosene, of course, if they inhale it, can be toxic and very damaging to their lungs. These 2 children did survive, but there was a prolonged PICU course for them. So head lice are never considered dangerous enough to risk your child's life. That's common sense, I know, but obviously not everybody understands that. So I'm going to go through what head lice are, how they spread, and then our current recommendations on treatment. So head lice are tiny little insects. They have 6 legs. A full-grown louse is gray to tan colored, and it's about the size of a sesame seed. So you can see it. You don't have to have a microscope to see these. Spread is entirely from direct contact. They can crawl. They can't fly. They can't hop, and they can't jump. So theoretically, if you were to brush your hair and pick up a few live active lice, and then another person immediately brushed their hair with the same hairbrush, possibly you could contaminate your own scalp with live head lice. But most of the time, it's when there's direct head-to-head contact. So I want you to think twice before you do your next selfie and you put your head beside of somebody else to take a picture with them. That's how they're actually spread. Scientists have even looked at the pillowcases of people with an active head lice infection, and only 4% of the time could they find any head lice on the pillowcase. So it's truly is just head-to-head contact is how that they are spread. So this is why we don't want people panicking. We also, the American Academy of Pediatrics does not recommend a no-nit policy because it could look like you have nits when really they're just dead shell casing sort of left on the hair. So back to the louse itself. The female can lay up to 10 eggs per day, and she can continue doing this for 3 to 4 weeks. Then the eggs have to hatch around 8 to 12 days. They go through 3 nymph phases, and then they can survive for 3 to 4 weeks. So this whole entire cycle sort of repeats itself about every 3 weeks. The eggs are typically laid at the base of the hair shaft, and the vital or live ones are typically the ones just within 1 centimeter of the scalp itself. They need that warmth to survive, and you'll have a better chance of finding them if you look on the posterior part, like just above your neck. Now, what happens is the reason they're so dang itchy is the lice have to feed on blood. And so they do that by injecting their saliva, which contains both a vasodilator to make you bleed more and an anticoagulant so that the blood won't clot. Very similar to a mosquito bite. Well, after several weeks, it has to build up. Your body becomes sensitized to the proteins in this lice saliva, and then that's when the itching becomes severe. So a lot of children could have had an infection of head lice gradually, but you don't realize it until there are enough lice for you to see visibly, with the visual inspection. Remember to look back there for the nits, and they may not be itching insanely until it's been 3 to 4 weeks so that they became sensitized to those proteins in the lice saliva. Now, let's talk about treatment. We still recommend OTC, over-the-counter treatments first. They're generally well tolerated and they're not terribly expensive. Now, there's an update from this guideline that even educated me. One of my favorite treatments has always been Lice, and it had become unavailable when I was trying to prescribe it, but it's because it went OTC, which is amazing. So we first start with the original over-the-counter products, which are pyrethrin or pyrethroid based. Those chemicals came initially from chrysanthemums, the mums, the flowers that we decorate with in the fall. And then I personally have a fall tradition of buying them and decorating my front porch, and then I let them die a slow, painful death because I forget to water them. And once again, I honored my fall tradition this year, and my mums have currently passed away. So if you're trying to remember where the chemicals come from to treat head lice, they're from chrysanthemums. But of course, now we can manufacture them synthetically, which is easier to do. And those chemicals, the pyrethrins or pyrethroids, are a neurotoxin to the head lice, and it can paralyze them and they die. So some people ask, well, if we killed everything, why do we need to use a nit comb? Just in case somehow in these cycles we were talking about, it's also why you repeat treatment later. If you didn't actually kill all of the nits, a nit comb could remove them so that the child's head would be nit free and hopefully not come back and hatch and create another infestation. And so a lot of the OTC ones are to be repeated in anywhere from 7 to 14 days, depending on the brand and manufacturer's instructions. So just read those instructions carefully. Now, if your child has failed the treatment with the pyrethrin-based ones like RID or Nix, then you could move on to the newer, and I presume still more expensive over-the-counter medicine called Lice. Now, with all of these, you wouldn't want to condition your hair because you want the medicine to actually stick to it when you do the treatment. And then, of course, you rinse it out later. And as I said, I do recommend a nit comb. So the guidelines say first try the OTC, the pyrethrin-based, RID or Nix. Then you could try the OTC Lice. And then if that's not working, you could call your pediatrician for some prescription options. And those are basically two: Spinosad, which is Natroba is the brand name, and Ovide. And Ovide, the only precaution is it is very flammable. It does stay on the hair for 8 to 10 hours. Unlike most of the other ones, are just sort of a cream rinse that stay on for 10 minutes. So make sure you follow the directions, obviously, and remember that many times they do need to be repeated. But I just want to reassure you guys, this is not a public health threat. Head lice do not carry the plague or anything like that. It is just a nuisance, a very itchy nuisance, and it's also often very embarrassing. But remember, it doesn't mean that it's a sign that you had poor hygiene. It's just a sign that your child had some sort of head-to-head contact with another child. So let me make sure I didn't forget anything. Oh, there are multiple over-the-counter products such as dimethicone, which may work okay. It's just not necessarily FDA approved. And in some studies, there's an over-the-counter product, Lice MD, that's this dimethicone base, that did work in one study. Manual removal with a nit comb works too if you were scared of doing the chemicals in the medicated head lice treatments. There are also methods to suffocate. They don't work as well. And those are things like covering your child's hair in olive oil and then putting a shower cap on so that you can suffocate them. And then you use the nit comb afterwards. They sleep in that. You nit comb them the next morning. You repeat that once a week for about 3 weeks in a row. So it's really very labor intensive. But if you wanted to try it, you can do mayonnaise, olive oil, or anything that's really greasy like that. And just remember that typically it doesn't pass through an entire kindergarten class unless they're putting their heads together. So try not to panic. I think I filled you in on everything. There's an old head lice medicine called Lindane, but it's neurotoxic, not just to the head lice, but also to the patients, the children. So we absolutely do not recommend that any longer. No Lindane. So I hope that cleared up. If you had any questions about head lice, and as always, if you found this useful, please like it. If you've not subscribed yet, I would appreciate it if you did, and feel free to share. And always let me know if you have any additional questions. Thanks.